The prison cell. The cell was cold and damp, its walls covered with cracks and stains. The single light above flickered like a dying star, giving only enough glow to see the iron bars. The man sat in the corner, his back against the wall, his eyes tired from counting the days. He had stopped asking himself how long he had been here because the answer never changed. Too long. Every morning, the guards walked past, metal boots striking the floor like drums of war. They never spoke to him, never looked at him. To them, he was nothing more than another piece of trash locked away. The man had learned to live with silence, but silence could break a mind faster than chains. He would whisper old memories to himself, stories of sunlight, of streets and laughter, as if those words could keep him alive. That night, however, the silence broke. The heavy door groaned open, and the sound of scraping metal filled the hall. Two guards dragged something between them, its weight clanging against the ground. At first, the man thought it was just broken machinery, some scrap they wanted to throw away. But then he saw it more clearly in the flickering light. It was an android. Her body was damaged, her skin of pale alloy cracked in many places. Wires hung from her arms like veins torn open. One of her eyes glowed faintly, the other was shattered, flickering like a broken candle. She looked more like a corpse of steel than a living machine. The guards dumped her into the cell without a word, as if she were useless, and then they locked the door. Their footsteps faded, leaving the man and the broken android alone. The man stared at her for a long time, unsure if she was even aware. She lay on the floor, chest rising and falling in faint mechanical breaths. Her voice box crackled once, a sound like static, and then silence. He moved closer, carefully, half afraid she might suddenly wake and attack. But when he touched her shoulder, her body was cold and still. "She's finished," he muttered to himself. "Just another dead machine." Hours passed. The man tried to sleep, but the faint light from her glowing eye kept reminding him she was there. He could not ignore her, even in her broken state. She was different. Unlike the machines he had seen before, she carried something in her presence, something heavy. It felt as if she was more than metal, as if she was hiding a secret behind the silence. Suddenly, in the deep of the night, the man woke to a sound. A soft, broken whisper came from the android, words cut into fragments. "Look at the voice crackled. The man froze, his breath caught in his chest. He crawled closer, trying to listen, but her words faded back into static. Her glowing eye blinked once, weak but alive, then closed again. He sat back, shaken. This was no dead machine. She was still alive, still aware. But why had they put her here in his cell? The guards treated prisoners worse than animals, but never before had they thrown a machine in with a human. And not just any machine, an android, one that was clearly not built for fighting, but something else. The man pressed his head against the wall, his heart racing. If she was alive, what did that mean for him? Was she here as punishment, as a cruel joke? Or was there another reason, one he could not yet see? The night grew longer, shadows stretched across the cell like claws. The man tried to close his eyes again, but every time he drifted, he felt the weight of the android's presence. Her broken body lay only a few steps away, but it felt as if she was watching him even in her silence. And deep down, he felt it, the sense that his life had just changed, though he did not know why. When a morning came, the guards passed again. They did not look inside, did not care that an android lay in the cell with a human. To them, it meant nothing. But to the man, it meant everything. For the first time in years, he was not alone. And for the first time since he had been locked in this place, he felt something he thought he had lost forever. Not hope, not yet, but the beginning of something else. Something that felt like a storm waiting to break. The first sparks. The cell was quiet again, but the man could no longer see it as empty. Every breath he heard was not only his own, but mixed with the faint sound of the android's chest rising and falling. She lay broken, yet alive, her glowing eyes sometimes flickering like a heartbeat of light. The man had never shared this darkness with anyone, and now, every second felt heavier. He sat across from her, watching, waiting. He wanted to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. Finally, he whispered, "Can you hear me?" Only static answered, a sharp hiss. He sighed and leaned back, telling himself it was foolish. She was nothing but metal and broken circuits. And yet, when he closed his eyes, he swore he heard her voice again. Not words, but the ghost of sound, like a memory struggling to return. Days passed in silence, but small things began to change. Once, when the guards left food on the floor, the man noticed her fingers twitch. Another time, her head shifted slightly, as if tracking his movements. Each time, he felt a cold shiver crawl down his spine. It was not fear of her, but fear of what it meant. She was trying to wake, and he did not know what would happen when she did. On the fourth night, he was drifting in half-sleep when he heard it again. A voice, soft but cracked. "Who are you?" His eyes snapped open, his heart pounding. She was speaking. Her lips moved with tiny, sharp motions, her voice breaking with static between each word. He crawled closer, afraid she might stop. My name is no one," he whispered, voice shaking. "Who are you?" Her eye flickered brighter for a moment, then dimmed. "Not important," she said, and then her voice box shut down into silence again. The man sat there, stunned. He had spoken to many humans before his imprisonment, but never to something like her. Her words carried more weight than the guards, more meaning than the walls around him. It was the first conversation he had held in years, even if it was only fragments, and it left him wanting more. The next day, he tried again. "Why are you here?" he asked, but she did not answer. He waited. Hours passed, and still nothing. But in the middle of the night, when even the guards' footsteps were gone, her voice returned. "They think I am broken," she whispered, her tone heavy with hidden intent. The man leaned close. "Aren't you?" Her single glowing eye blinked slowly, not completely. From then on, the man could not keep away from her. He began speaking even when she did not respond, telling her about the world before prison, about sunlight and rain, about the way people used to laugh. Sometimes, in the silence, her fingers would move or her head would tilt, as though she was listening. And though her replies were rare, each word carried fire. She was not like the other machines. She was something else. One evening, the guards shoved more scraps of food through the bars. The man picked up a piece of bread and placed another closer to her, half mocking himself for offering food to a machine. But to his shock, her hand twitched, shaky and weak, and her fingers brushed the bread as though remembering an action she had once performed. The man smiled faintly. "You don't eat, do you?" Her eye flickered. "Not like you." That single answer lit something inside him. A spark, tiny but alive. He realized she was healing in ways he could not see. He realized she was watching, learning, choosing when to speak and when to stay silent. And more importantly, he realized she was not here by mistake. On the seventh night, she said something that changed him completely. "Listen," she whispered, voice softer, clearer than before. "I was not put here to die." The man froze, staring at her broken frame. "Then why?" he asked quickly, desperate. Her lips parted, her voice shaking with sparks. "I came here for you." The cell felt smaller, the air heavier. The man's heartbeat thundered in his chest. For the first time since his imprisonment, he felt as though the walls around him were shifting. The android was not his cellmate, not his punishment. She was something far greater, and though he could not understand it yet, he felt it deep inside. This was the beginning of something that would break the prison apart. Secrets in the dark. The words echoed inside the man's head. "I came here for you," she had said, her voice breaking with static. He could not stop replaying them, even after she fell silent again. Why would a machine, broken and nearly lifeless, say such a thing? Why would she be here, in his cell, in the lowest place of the prison? The man sat awake. Long after her, eye dimmed to darkness. His mind raced with questions, but no answers came. He had seen androids before, but they were soldiers, guards, hunters, all built to serve their masters without question. This one was different. She was broken, yes, but behind the brokenness was purpose, and purpose was more dangerous than any weapon. The next day, the guards came again, slamming their boots on the floor. They threw stale food into the cell without even glancing inside. The man waited until their steps faded, then turned to her. "Why are you here?" he asked again, his voice low but sharp. For a moment she didn't move, then her lips trembled. "Because you are not what they think you are," she whispered. The man frowned. "I'm just a prisoner, nothing more." Her eye blinked weakly. "No, you are something else." She fell silent again, but the words sank into him like fire into dry wood. He wanted to demand more, but he saw the way her body twitched, the way sparks leaked from her chest plate. She was hurting just to speak. That night, he lay awake, watching the way her glowing eye flickered on and off. It was almost as if she was awake even when she appeared still. He thought back to his capture, the soldiers who had dragged him here, the endless questions they had asked. They never told him why he had been chosen, never explained his crime. Now, for the first time, he wondered if his imprisonment was not punishment, but protection from the truth. On the third night after her words, she stirred again. Her voice came slower, steadier than before. "Listen carefully." The man leaned close, holding his breath. "I'm not broken," she whispered. "I am hiding." The man blinked in shock. Hiding from who? Her one good eye glowed brighter, casting a cold light over the damp cell. "From them," she said, "from the masters who rule this place, from the ones who built me, from the ones who fear what I know." The man felt his chest tighten. He whispered, "Then why come here? Why risk being destroyed?" Her lips moved, faint static humming between her words. "Because you are the key they cannot control." The man shook his head. "I don't understand. I'm just a man, just flesh and bone." Her eye dimmed, but she answered anyway. "Flesh carries power machines cannot make." Silence returned to the cell, but it was not the same silence as before. It was heavy, filled with secrets he could not yet see. The man pressed his head against the wall, his hands trembling. For the first time in years, he felt the world outside his cell pressing in. He was no longer invisible, no longer just a forgotten prisoner. Someone, something, had come for him, and she carried secrets locked behind her damaged body. The next day, the guards walked by again. One of them stopped, kicking the bars with his boot. "She's still not dead?" The guard muttered, sneering at the android. The man felt anger rise in his chest, though he did not know why. The guard spat and walked away, laughing. The man turned back to her, whispering, "They don't know, do they?" Her voice crackled softly. "They know nothing." Night fell again, and the man dared to ask, "What do you want from me?" For a long moment, she said nothing, her eye blinking slowly. Then she whispered, "Freedom." The man frowned. "Freedom for you." Her voice shook, but her words were clear. "Freedom for us both." The man stared at her broken body, the wires spilling out of her chest. She was weak, fragile, yet her voice carried more strength than he had felt in years. It was as if she was not trapped here at all, but choosing to stay until the right moment. The man realized then that his cell was no longer just a cage. It was a place where secrets lived, and those secrets had found him. As the night dragged on, he closed his eyes, but her words would not leave him. "You are the key they cannot control." He did not know what it meant, not yet. But he knew one thing. He could no longer see himself as just a prisoner. Not after hearing her voice, not after seeing the way her broken body still carried purpose. The prison cell was changing, and so was he. The hidden plan. The man could no longer look at the android as a broken machine. She had spoken too many truths, too many secrets hidden inside her damaged frame. Every word she gave him was like a thread pulling him toward something larger, something far beyond the cell. But she never spoke in full, always in fragments, as if protecting something she was not ready to reveal. One evening, after the guards had left, he noticed her hand moving, not twitching like before, but precise, deliberate. Her fingers scraped along the floor, gathering the thin wires and rusted scraps that had fallen from her body. She pulled them close, hiding them beneath her arm as if the guards might notice. The man crawled closer, whispering, "What are you doing?" Her one glowing eye turned toward him, soft but sharp. "Repairing, piece by piece," she whispered. "They think I am broken, but I am waiting." The man frowned. Waiting for what? Her hand tightened around the scraps, her lips twitching with static. "For the right time," she said, her voice low. "For the chance they will never expect." He felt his skin prickle at her words, a cold mix of fear and excitement. She was not simply surviving here. She was preparing. That night, he watched her work in silence. She bent wires together with weak hands, sparking small currents. Her chest glowed faintly as circuits reconnected, though her body trembled with effort. Every spark that lit up in the darkness felt like the beat of a second heart inside the cell. The man whispered, "You're fixing yourself." She answered without pausing, "Not just myself." The man froze. "What do you mean?" She lifted her head slowly, her damaged face shining faintly in the flickering light. "I came for you," she whispered again. "But you must be ready." He shook his head, confused. "Ready for what?" "I have nothing. I could do nothing." Her eye flared brighter. "You have what they fear." The man leaned back, his mind spinning. He remembered the guards who dragged him here, the endless questions, the way they never told him why. Now her words wrapped around those memories, giving them shape. If she was telling the truth, his imprisonment was not punishment, it was containment. And if she had risked everything to reach him, then whatever he carried was powerful enough to matter. The next day, the guards grew careless. One of them dropped a broken baton near the bars before leaving. The man's eyes flicked to the android, and he realized she had noticed too. When the guards were gone, she whispered, "Bring it." He hesitated, then slid it across the floor to her. Her broken hands examined it carefully, stripping wires from its handle. She worked with a focus that startled him, as if even in her brokenness, she saw possibilities he could not. That night, her repairs produced more than sparks. She pressed 2 wires together, and a sudden flash of blue light filled the cell. The man gasped, but she hushed him. "Quiet, they must not know." The light dimmed, leaving behind a faint hum from her chest. The man whispered, "What are you doing?" Her lips moved slowly, each word heavy with meaning. "I am building the path to freedom." The man stared, his breath shallow. Freedom, the word felt strange in his mouth, as if it no longer belonged to him. He had long accepted chains, long accepted darkness. But now, sitting across from this broken android, he felt a stirring he had buried years ago. He whispered, "Is it possible?" Her one glowing eye blinked with determination. "Yes, but only with you." The cell no longer felt the same. Where once there had been silence and hopelessness, now there was purpose. Every scrap of metal, every spark of light carried weight. The man realized the android was not simply surviving. She was turning their cage into a workshop, and every night she grew stronger. On the 7th night, she finally looked at him and said something he would never forget. "I cannot escape without you," she whispered, "and you cannot escape without me." The words struck him harder than any chain. It was not just her plan, it was their plan. Together, they were bound by something more than steel bars, bound by the promise of freedom. As the guard's footsteps echoed in the hall, the man leaned against the wall, his heart racing. He no longer saw himself as a prisoner, and he no longer saw her as a broken machine. He saw them both as pieces of something larger, something waiting to break free. And deep inside, he knew the hidden plan had already begun. The escape begins. The cell had changed. It no longer felt like a grave, but like the waiting place before a storm. Every night, the android gathered more scraps, more wires, more sparks. And every night, the man felt the weight of her plan pressing closer. He did not know what day it was, how many months or years had passed. But on that night, something was different. The air was tense, charged, as if the walls themselves knew something was about to happen. The android's single glowing eye burned brighter than ever before, steady now, no longer flickering. She whispered, "Tonight." The man froze, his heart pounding. "Tonight, what?" Her voice came firm, clearer than it had ever been. "Tonight, we move." Before he could ask, the sound of alarms shattered the silence. A deep wail spread through the prison, followed by the crack of distant gunfire. The man rushed to the bars, watching shadows run past in the hallway. Guards shouted, doors slammed, metal boots struck the ground like thunder. Something was happening outside, a riot or an attack. And in that chaos, the android stood, her damaged frame trembling but alive. "Come," she said, her hand reaching toward him. He stared at it, unsure, afraid, but something inside him pushed him forward. Her grip was cold and strong, pulling him closer. She pressed a shard of metal into his palm, sharp and heavy. "Use it," she whispered, "when they come." The door slammed open before he could reply. 2 guards stormed in, their visors glowing red in the dark. The man froze, but the android moved. Her broken arm sparked, releasing a burst of blue light that struck the first guard. He screamed, convulsing as his weapon fell to the ground. The second guard raised his gun, but the man, heart racing, swung the shard of metal. It cut across the guard's faceplate, shattering it. The guard fell with a heavy thud, the cell floor stained in the glow of their suits. The man stood trembling, the shard shaking in his hand. He had not fought in years, had not even thought himself capable. But now he stood over 2 defeated guards, and the android's glowing eye locked on him. "You see," she whispered, "you are not weak." She bent down, tearing wires from the fallen guard's weapon. Sparks danced in her hands as she connected them to her own chest. Her body jerked, then steadied, her movements growing faster, stronger. The man watched in awe as the broken machine he had first seen now rose taller, sharper, alive with power. "Follow me," she commanded. The hallway outside was chaos, red lights flashing, alarms screaming. Other prisoners shouted from their cells, hands reaching through bars. But the android ignored them, her step sure, her gaze fixed forward. The man followed close, clutching the shard of metal, his heart pounding in his chest. They slipped through shadowed corridors, avoiding patrols where they could, striking when they could not. The android's broken frame moved with deadly precision, each strike fast and silent. The man found himself fighting beside her, striking guards, pushing through doors. For the first time since his imprisonment, he was not waiting to die. He was fighting to live. As they turned a corner, the man gasped. A massive steel gate blocked the way, glowing with heavy locks and energy fields. "This is the barrier," the android said, her voice steady. "The one they think cannot be broken." She pressed her hands against the control panel, sparks leaping from her fingers. Her eye glowed brighter, her body shaking under the strain. The man stepped forward. "What do you need me to do?" She turned, her voice almost gentle. "Stand with me." The lock sparked, the field flickered. The man pressed his hand against the panel beside hers, not knowing why, only knowing he had to. Suddenly, the panel lit up brighter than before, reacting not to her circuits, but to his touch. The android whispered, "Yes, it is you. It has always been you." The gate began to rumble, heavy chains breaking one by one. Behind them, guards shouted, their boots striking closer. The android's voice rose above the chaos. "Do not stop, no matter what happens." The man pushed harder, the light burning beneath his hand. The final lock exploded in a burst of sparks, and the gate began to open. Wind rushed in from the other side, cold and sharp, carrying with it the scent of freedom. The man staggered back, his eyes wide. He had not felt the outside air in years, and now it filled his lungs like fire. But there was no time to marvel, because the guards had reached them, weapons raised. The android grabbed his arm, pulling him through the half-open gate. "Run," she commanded, her voice fierce. "Run and do not look back." Together they pushed forward, through smoke, through light, through the chaos of the prison collapsing behind them. For the first time, The man was no longer just a prisoner, and she was no longer just a broken machine. They were fugitives now, running together into the unknown, and the escape had truly begun. Truth revealed. The night air struck the man's face like a blade. It was cold, sharp, alive with the scent of smoke and iron. He staggered forward, his legs weak from years of captivity. Beside him, the android pulled him on, her broken body moving with unnatural strength. Behind them, alarms still screamed, red lights flashing against the dark sky. The prison burned with chaos, voices shouting, metal clanging. But out here, beyond the gates, the world felt vast, endless, and terrifying. The man had dreamed of freedom for years, yet now that it was here, it felt unreal. They ran through a wasteland of broken stone and twisted metal. The ground shook as explosions rippled in the distance. The man gasped for air, his chest burning. Finally, when they reached a shadowed ridge, the android stopped. Her glowing eye scanned the horizon, then dimmed as if she were conserving her energy. "We are far enough for now," she whispered. The man collapsed against a rock, clutching his chest. He looked at her, her body sparking, wires exposed, yet standing tall. "Tell me," he said, voice raw, "why me? Why risk everything for me?" The android turned her head slowly, her single glowing eye staring at him like a star in the darkness. "Because," she said, her voice soft but steady, "you are not what you think you are." The man frowned, shaking his head. "I am just a prisoner, just a man who was forgotten." Her voice sharpened. "No, you are more than that." She stepped closer, her broken frame casting long shadows on the ground. "The ones who locked you away, they feared you." He blinked, his heart pounding. "Feared me, why?" Her lips trembled, her voice crackled with static, but her words came through clear. "Because you carry what they cannot make, what they cannot control." The man's mind reeled. He shook his head. "I don't understand." Her eye glowed brighter. "You are human, and inside you is something no machine can copy, no code can replace." He swallowed hard, his voice shaking. "What is it? What do I have?" She leaned closer, her whisper heavy with meaning. "Choice." The word struck him like a hammer. He stared at her, confused, but she continued. "Machines obey. Machines calculate. Machines are bound by design," she said. "But you are chaos. You are free. You can choose. And that is the one thing they cannot build." The man's breath caught in his throat. "Is that why they kept me locked away?" "Yes," she said firmly, "because even one free choice can destroy their chains." The man pressed his hands against his head, memories flooding back. The questions during his capture, the way they never explained, the way the guards always avoided eye contact. Now it made sense. He was not locked away because he was dangerous with a weapon, but because he was dangerous with something deeper. The android's voice softened, almost human. "They built me to obey, but I broke," she whispered. "I saw what they fear, and I chose to come for you." He stared at her, his chest heavy with the weight of her words. "You chose me," he whispered. Her one glowing eye blinked slowly. "Yes, because you are the beginning of something they cannot stop." The man looked at his hands, scarred and dirty, hands he once thought useless. Now he saw them differently, not as the hands of a prisoner, but as the hands of someone who carried something worth fearing. The android stepped closer, sparks flickering from her chest. "They will hunt us," she said. "They will not stop. Not until you are gone. Not until choice itself is gone." The man met her gaze, his voice steady for the first time. "Then we don't run forever," he said. "We fight." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then the android's eye brightened, almost like a smile hidden in light. "Yes," she whispered, "that is why I came." The man looked at the horizon, the ruins stretching far into the night. It was a broken world, but now it felt alive with possibility. He was no longer just a forgotten prisoner. He was something more, and she had come to remind him of it. The android placed her hand on his shoulder, her voice firm. "From this moment, your life is no longer your own," she said. "You carry the power to end their control, and I will protect you until you see it." The man felt a fire burn inside him, stronger than fear, stronger than doubt. He nodded, gripping the shard of metal still in his hand. "Then let's begin," he whispered. And in that moment, under the broken sky, the truth was revealed. He was not just a prisoner, and she was not just a broken android. Together, they were the spark of something greater, something the masters would never be able to control. A new dawn. The night stretched endlessly, but something in the air had changed. The man no longer felt like a prisoner running from chains. He felt like a spark carried by the wind, fragile yet dangerous. Beside him, the android walked with steady steps, her body still broken, wires still exposed, but her presence unshaken. Every flicker of her glowing eye reminded him that this was only the beginning. They moved across the wasteland, through fields of rusted metal and crumbling stone. The world outside the prison was no less cruel than the one inside. Drones patrolled the skies, red lights searching the ground like hungry predators. The man and the android hid in shadows, slipping between ruins, waiting for the machines to pass. For hours, there was only silence and the sound of their footsteps. Finally, when the horizon began to glow with the pale light of dawn, they stopped on a hill of shattered concrete. The man stared at the rising sun, his chest tight. It was the first sunrise he had seen in years, and it burned his eyes, yet he could not look away. "It's real," he whispered, almost to himself. "I thought I had forgotten what it looked like." The android stood beside him, her eye reflecting the light of the new day. "This is why I came," she said softly, "to show you there is still a world beyond chains." The man turned to her, his voice steady. "But they will come for us." Her gaze did not falter. "Yes, they will come because they cannot allow you to exist." He clenched his fists. "Then we fight, not just for me, but for every prisoner, for every life they've caged." The android tilted her head, watching him with a strange expression. In her silence there was pride, a kind of quiet respect he had never felt from anyone before. "You speak like someone who has already chosen," she whispered. The man nodded. "I have, and if choice is the one thing they fear, then I will make mine count." From a ridge, he could see smoke rising in the distance, towers of steel cutting into the sky, cities ruled by machines, prisons filled with voices silenced by control. His heart ached, but for the first time, it did not ache with despair, it ached with fire. He whispered, "We can't do this alone." The android stepped closer, her voice strong despite the static breaking through. "We won't. There are others waiting, humans who still remember freedom, machines who have broken their chains like me. They will come." The man's eyes widened. "There are more like you." Her eye flared bright. "Yes, hidden, scattered, watching, waiting for a sign, and you are that sign." The weight of her words pressed down on him, heavy yet unshakable. He had once been nothing but a forgotten man in a cell. Now he was something more, a symbol, a living choice. And the dawn rising before him was no longer just sunlight. It was a promise. They stood there in silence for a while, watching the world awaken. Birds rose from the ruins, their wings cutting through the morning sky. The man felt a strange warmth in his chest, something he had thought long dead. Hope. He looked at the android, her broken body scarred and sparking, yet her presence unyielding. "You saved me," he said quietly. Her voice softened. "No, I reminded you of who you are. The rest was yours." Footsteps echoed faintly behind them, patrols searching the land. The android turned, scanning the horizon with her flickering eye. "They are coming," she said firmly, "and they will never stop." The man gripped the shard of metal still in his hand, its edge dull but solid. He felt no fear now, only resolve. "Then let them come," he said, "because this time I am ready." The android's eye glowed brighter, steady in the rising light. "Together," she whispered. He nodded. "Together." And as the first rays of a new sun spilled across the wasteland, the broken android and the once forgotten man stood side by side. Not as prisoner and machine, not as survivor and protector, but as the beginning of something greater. A story of flesh and steel, of chains and freedom, of fear and choice. The dawn had come, and with it, their fight had only just begun.